Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he stared at the battle screen. Red lights flashed everywhere on the bridge of the USS Defiance. The ship shook as another enemy blast hit their shields. "Sir, our shields are down to 30%, called out Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station. Captain Ryan Stone looked grim. "How many ships have we lost?" 15, sir. The Zarian mothership is too strong. Our weapons can't get through their shields." Jake watched the massive enemy ship on the screen. It was 3 times bigger than anything the humans had ever built. The Zarians had been winning this war for 2 years. Every battle ended the same way. The aliens retreated and more good people died. The other alien races in the Galactic Council called humans the baby species. They said humans were too young and too stupid to really help in the war. Most of the time, human ships just carried supplies or guarded empty space while the real fighters did the important work. Jake had been in this war since the beginning. He had seen too many friends die. He had watched alien commanders make the same mistakes over and over again. They fought like machines, always following the same patterns. But humans were different. Humans could think outside the box, Captain. Jake said, stepping forward. "I have an idea." Captain Stone turned to look at him. Jake was just a staff sergeant, but everyone on the ship knew he was smart. He had saved their lives more times than anyone could count. "What is it, Morrison?" "The Zarians think like computers. They expect us to attack the same way every time. But what if we don't?" "Explain." Jake pointed at the screen. 3 hours ago, our fighters shot down a Zarian scout ship. It's still floating out there, damaged but not destroyed. If someone could get inside it and fly it to the mothership, they might not shoot it down. That's suicide, Morrison. Even if you got close, how would you damage something that big? Jake smiled. We still have those quantum charges from the mining station we captured last month. One charge placed in the right spot could make their reactor explode. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew it was a crazy plan. But crazy plans were sometimes the only ones that worked. "It's too dangerous," Captain Stone said. "I won't order anyone to do that." "You don't have to order me, sir. I volunteer." "Jake, no," Amy said from her station. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Jake replied. "Look at the screen." "We're losing. In 1 hour, that mothership will destroy our entire fleet. Then it will head to Earth and kill everyone we care about." Captain Stone studied Jake's face. He had known the young soldier for 3 years. Jake never gave up, and he never let his friends down. How would you even get to the Zarian ship without being seen? "The debris field from the last battle. I can use our smallest fighter and hide among the wreckage. The Zarians won't expect anyone to be crazy enough to try it. And then, I fly the captured ship straight at the mothership. When I get close to their reactor core, I set off the quantum charge. You'll die." Jake shrugged. "Maybe. But if I don't try, we all die anyway." The ship shook again as more enemy fire hit them. On the screen, Jake could see another human ship exploding in a ball of fire. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "Admiral Parker wants to know our status." Captain Stone looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Morrison, you have 5 minutes to get to that fighter. Brooks, load a quantum charge and give him everything he needs." "Yes, sir." Jake ran through the corridors of the ship. Other soldiers stopped to watch him go. Word traveled fast on a ship during battle. Everyone knew what he was about to try. In the fighter bay, the mechanics worked quickly to prepare his ship. It was the smallest fighter they had, barely big enough for one person. The quantum charge was attached to the bottom, hidden from enemy sensors. "Jake," Amy said, running up to him. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." He put on his helmet and checked his controls. "Tell my sister I said goodbye. Tell her yourself when you get back." Jake climbed into the fighter and started the engines. The bay doors opened and he could see the battle raging outside. Laser beams crossed the darkness like deadly lightning. Ships exploded in bright flashes that lit up space for just a moment before fading away. He flew out slowly, staying close to the wreckage of destroyed ships. The Zarians were focused on the big targets. They didn't notice one small human fighter moving through the debris. It took 20 minutes to reach the damaged Zarian scout ship. Jake's hands were steady as he docked with it and climbed inside. The alien controls were different, but he had studied captured Zarian technology for months. The scout ship's engines came to life. Jake turned it toward the massive mothership and began to fly. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. This was what he had trained for his whole life. The Zarian mothership grew larger and larger on his screen. Soon it filled his entire view. He was inside their defensive perimeter now. Any second, they might realize he didn't belong there. Jake found the entrance to the ship's reactor core. It was heavily defended, but the defenders thought he was one of them. They let him pass. Inside the mothership, Jake could see the massive reactor that powered the entire ship. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. If he could place the quantum charge in the right spot, the explosion would destroy the whole ship. He landed the scout ship and climbed out. Alien voices echoed through the corridors, but no one had discovered him yet. Jake ran toward the reactor, carrying the quantum charge in his hands. Alarms began to sound. Someone had finally realized what was happening. Jake heard footsteps running toward him. He had maybe 1 minute before they caught him. He reached the reactor core and attached the quantum charge. His hands moved quickly over the controls, setting the timer. 30 seconds. That was all the time he had to get away. Jake ran back to the scout ship as fast as he could. Zarian soldiers appeared in the corridor, shooting laser beams at him. He dove into the ship and started the engines. The mothership's hangar doors were closing. Jake pushed the engines to maximum power and flew straight at the shrinking opening. Laser fire filled the air around him. He made it outside just as the quantum charge exploded. The mothership died in a ball of white light that could be seen across the entire battle zone. Every ship in both fleets stopped fighting for a moment, stunned by what had just happened. Jake's scout ship was thrown away by the explosion. His controls were dead, his engines were gone, but he was alive. In the distance, he could see the human fleet cheering. The war was over. The humans had won, and somehow, against all odds, Jake Morrison was still breathing. 3 months after the Great Battle, Jake Morrison stood in the Grand Hall of Concordia Prime Station. He had never seen anything like it. The walls were made of crystal that seemed to glow with their own light. Beings from 12 different worlds filled the massive room. Jake felt uncomfortable in his dress uniform. He was used to fighting, not fancy parties. But Admiral Parker had told him he had to be here. The whole galaxy wanted to honor the human who had ended the war. "Nervous?" asked Colonel Lisa Hayes, standing beside him. "A little," Jake admitted. "I just did my job. I don't know why everyone is making such a big deal about it." Lisa smiled. "You destroyed the most powerful warship in Zerion history. You saved billions of lives. That's a pretty big deal." Music began to play and the crowd turned toward the main entrance. Emperor Vorthak of the Altarian Empire walked in, wearing robes covered in gold and silver. He was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. Behind him walked 3 young women who could only be his daughters. Jake had heard about Emperor Vorthak. The Altarians were one of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. Their technology was almost as advanced as the Zerians had been. During the war, Vorthak's ships had saved the human colony on New Mars from destruction. The Emperor approached Jake with slow, careful steps. When he spoke, his voice was deep and formal. "Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison of Earth," he said, "you have brought great honor to your species and great service to mine. The Altarian people owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Jake didn't know what to say. "I was just doing my duty, Your Majesty." Duty. The Emperor seemed to consider the word. "Yes, humans speak often of duty. It is a concept we respect," he gestured to his daughters. "As is our custom, I offer you the hand of one of my daughters in marriage along with a noble title and lands on Altair Prime." The crowd murmured with excitement. This was a huge honor. Altarian princesses had never married outside their own species before. The 3 princesses stepped forward, and Jake got his first good look at them. Princess Lyanna. The eldest was everything Jake expected from an alien princess. She was tall and graceful, with the same blue skin as her father. Her clothes were made of the finest materials, and jewels sparkled in her long silver hair. When she looked at Jake, her expression was polite but distant. Princess Celeste, the middle daughter, looked more serious. She wore simpler clothes and carried herself like a soldier. Jake had heard she was a brilliant scientist who had helped design some of the weapons used in the war. Her eyes studied him with obvious intelligence. Then there was Princess Zara, the youngest. She was smaller than her sisters, and her skin was a lighter shade of blue. She wore a simple dress with no jewels at all. While her sisters stood straight and proud, Zara seemed to be trying to hide behind them. When Jake looked at her, she quickly looked away. "Each of my daughters has great gifts," Emperor Vorthak said. "Lyanna will one day rule our empire. She knows the ways of politics and trade. Celeste has the finest scientific mind of her generation. Her inventions have made our people stronger." The Emperor paused, and Jake noticed he didn't say anything about Zara's gifts. The choice is yours, human. Which of my daughters do you find worthy? Jake looked at the three princesses again. Everyone in the hall was watching him. He could hear whispers in a dozen different languages. Most people seemed to think he would choose Liana, the future ruler. Others thought Celeste would be the smart choice, but Jake kept looking at Zara. She was still trying to hide, but he could see something in her eyes. It wasn't pride or ambition like her sisters. It was sadness. She looked like someone who had been hurt many times and expected to be hurt again. Before I choose, Jake said, may I speak with each princess? Emperor Vorthak nodded. Of course. Jake walked over to Liana first. She smiled at him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. You would have a good life with me, she said in perfect English. I can offer you power and position among the stars. Thank you, Your Highness. What do you think of other species? Humans, for example? Humans are useful, she said carefully. Your victory proved that even young species can contribute to galactic civilization. Jake nodded and moved to Celeste. She looked at him with sharp, calculating eyes. I have studied human military tactics, she said. Your approach to warfare is crude but effective. I could teach you about real science and technology. What about human culture? Our art, our music, our stories? Celeste shrugged. Primitive but harmless. You would learn to appreciate more sophisticated things in time. Finally, Jake walked over to Zara. She was shaking slightly and she wouldn't look at him. Your Highness, he said gently, what do you think of humans? For a moment she didn't answer. Then she looked up at him, and Jake saw something that surprised him. Her eyes were full of compassion and understanding. I think, she said quietly, that humans feel things very deeply. Your emotions are strong and real. Many people see that as weakness, but I think it's beautiful. It's what made you brave enough to save us all. Jake felt something click in his mind. Here was someone who understood what it meant to be human, not the violence or the technology, but the heart of what made his people special. I've made my choice, Jake announced, turning back to the Emperor. The hall went completely silent. Everyone leaned forward to hear his decision. I choose Princess Zara. The silence exploded into shocked whispers. Jake heard gasps and confused voices in many languages. Some people sounded angry. Others sounded confused. Emperor Vorthak's 4 eyes widened in surprise. Are you certain? Perhaps you do not understand what you are choosing. I understand perfectly, Your Majesty. Princess Liana looked offended. Princess Celeste seemed confused. But Princess Zara looked terrified. Why? She whispered. Why would you choose me? Jake smiled at her. Because you're the only one who sees me as a person instead of just a useful tool. Emperor Vorthak recovered from his shock. Very well. If this is your choice, then it shall be honored. But you should know that Zara is different from her sisters. Different how? She has certain abilities that our people consider unfortunate. She can sense the emotions and thoughts of other beings. It is seen as a weakness in our culture. Jake looked at Zara with new understanding. No wonder she seemed so sad. In a society that valued strength and control, having empathy would be seen as a flaw. Your Majesty, Jake said, on my world, we would call that a gift, not a weakness. Zara's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in her life, someone had called her abilities a gift. The ceremony continued, but Jake barely noticed. He was thinking about what he had just learned. Princess Zara could understand the feelings of others. In a galaxy full of different species who barely understood each other, that wasn't a weakness at all. It was exactly what the galaxy needed. As the evening ended, Jake found himself alone with Zara on a balcony overlooking the stars. She was still nervous around him. You don't have to do this, she said. I could speak to my father. You could still choose one of my sisters. I don't want your sisters, Jake said. I want to get to know you. But why? Everyone says I'm the worthless daughter. I can't rule an empire like Liana. I can't build weapons like Celeste. All I can do is feel what others feel. Jake looked out at the stars. Princess, do you know why humans won this war? Because you're brave fighters. No. We won because we understood our enemies better than they understood us. We could predict what they would do because we knew how they thought and felt. Your gift could prevent wars before they start. Zara was quiet for a long time. No one has ever said that to me before. Then no one has been paying attention, Jake said. Trust me, Princess. Sometimes the most important gifts are the ones other people can't see. As they stood together under the alien stars, Jake knew he had made the right choice. He didn't understand everything about this strange new life he was entering, but he understood one thing perfectly. Sometimes the greatest treasures were the ones everyone else ignored. The transport ship Meridian was not a luxury vessel. It carried cargo and passengers between the core worlds, and comfort was not its main purpose. Jake Morrison didn't mind. He had spent most of his adult life on military ships where comfort meant having clean water and food that didn't taste like cardboard. Princess Zara, however, was clearly struggling with the simple accommodations. She sat on the narrow bunk in her small cabin looking lost and afraid. She had never been away from the royal palace for more than a few days. "The sleeping quarters are adequate," she said when Jake checked on her after their first day of travel. Jake could tell she was lying. Her empathic abilities might let her read others, but her own emotions were easy to see on her face. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said, sitting down across from her. "If something is bothering you, you can tell me." Zara looked surprised. "In my family, we don't complain about difficulties. It shows weakness. Where I come from, we call it being honest." For the next few days, they barely spoke. Zara spent most of her time in her cabin, reading from a small electronic device. Jake tried to give her space, but he was worried about her. She looked sadder each day. On the fourth day, Jake decided to try a different approach. He brought 2 cups of coffee to her cabin and knocked on the door. "Princess, I thought you might like to try something from Earth." Zara opened the door. She had been crying, though she tried to hide it. "What is it?" she asked, taking the cup. "Coffee. It's a hot drink we make from beans. Some people love it, others hate it." Zara took a small sip and made a face. "It's very bitter." Jake laughed. "Yeah, it takes getting used to. Here, try it with some sugar." As Zara added sugar to her coffee, Jake noticed she was watching him carefully. "You're reading my emotions, aren't you?" he asked. She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I can't help it. Your feelings are very loud. What do you sense?" "Confusion, worry, and something else I don't understand. It feels warm and safe." Jake thought about that. Maybe that's what humans call friendship. "Friendship?" Zara seemed puzzled. "But we barely know each other." "That's usually how friendship starts. 2 people getting to know each other." Zara was quiet for a moment. "In Altarian culture, relationships are based on status and usefulness. Friendship, as you describe it, we don't really have that." "That sounds lonely." "It is." The words came out before Zara could stop them. She looked shocked that she had admitted such a thing. Jake set down his coffee cup. "Zara, can I ask you something? What's it like being able to feel what others feel?" "Overwhelming, mostly. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room full of people and immediately know that half of them dislike you? To feel their disgust and pity every time they look at you?" "Is that why you were hiding at the ceremony?" Zara nodded. "Everyone there thought my father was making a mistake by including me. They couldn't understand why he would offer his defective daughter to a war hero." "You're not defective. I can feel your emotions, Jake. I know you're just trying to be kind." Jake leaned forward. "What am I feeling right now?" Zara concentrated for a moment. "Anger, but not at me. At them? The people who made you feel unwanted?" "That's right. I'm angry that anyone made you believe you're worthless." "Because you're not." Tears started to form in Zara's eyes. "How can you say that? You don't even know me." "Then tell me about yourself. Help me know you." And slowly Zara began to talk. She told Jake about growing up in the palace, always knowing she was different. About how her empathic abilities had manifested when she was very young, and how her family had tried to hide her gift from the outside world. "When I was 10, she said, there was a trade dispute with the Corvan Republic. The negotiations were going badly. I could feel the anger and fear on both sides building up. I told my father that the Corvan ambassador wasn't really angry about trade routes. He was afraid that his people were starving." "What happened?" "My father listened to me. He offered food aid along with the trade agreement. The negotiation succeeded, and thousands of Corvan lives were saved." Zara's voice grew bitter. "But my uncle Duke Malthorn said I had embarrassed our family by suggesting we give charity to inferiors." Jake felt his own anger rising. "Your uncle sounds like an idiot." Zara looked shocked. "You can't say that. He's a duke." "I don't care if he's the emperor of the universe. Anyone who calls saving lives embarrassing is an idiot. For the first time since Jake had met her, Zara smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. You really mean that? I really do. As the days passed, Jake and Zara spent more time together. Jake told her stories about Earth, about his childhood in small-town Colorado, about the first time he had seen the stars from a spaceship. Zara shared more about Altarian culture, about the rigid social rules that governed every aspect of her life. On Altair Prime, she explained, everyone knows their place. The nobles rule, the scientists create, the workers serve. There's no room for someone who doesn't fit the categories. Sounds boring, Jake said. It's stable, predictable. That's what my people value. What do you value? Zara thought for a long time. I used to think I valued the same things. But talking with you, I think I value understanding. Connection. The feeling that someone sees me for who I really am. Jake smiled. I think I'm starting to understand you, Zara. And I like what I see. On the 10th day of their journey, bad news reached them. A priority message came through the ship's communication system. Duke Malthorn, Zara's uncle, was challenging the marriage agreement. He claimed that Jake had been deceived about Zara's fitness as a bride and demanded that Emperor Vorthak offer him a different princess. Zara read the message and went pale. I knew this would happen. What do you mean? My uncle has always hated me. He thinks I'm a stain on the family honor. He's been waiting for a chance to get rid of me permanently. Jake read the message again. What can he actually do? He has influence with the Noble Council. If enough of them agree that the marriage was made under false pretenses, they can force my father to annul it. And then what happens to you? Zara's voice was very quiet. Exile, probably. Or they might decide I should spend my life in a monastery away from polite society. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. They can't do that, they can. And they will. You should let them give you one of my sisters instead. Liana or Celeste would make you happy. No, they wouldn't. How can you know that? Jake took Zara's hands in his. Because they don't see the galaxy the way you do. They see other species as useful or useless, strong or weak. You see them as people with feelings and hopes and fears. That's not a weakness, Zara. That's exactly what this galaxy needs. But my uncle, your uncle is wrong. And I'm going to prove it. Zara looked at him with wide eyes. How? Jake smiled. By showing everyone what you can really do. Your empathic abilities aren't just useful for understanding individuals. They could help entire species understand each other. I don't understand. Trust me, Jake said. We're going to change some minds. That night, Jake sent his own message back to Altair Prime. It was addressed to Emperor Vorthak, with copies to the Galactic Council and Duke Malthorn himself. Your Majesty, he wrote, I am honored by your offer and grateful for your daughter's hand in marriage. Princess Zara possesses gifts that could reshape galactic diplomacy. I look forward to demonstrating her value to those who have failed to see it. The marriage will proceed as planned. He signed it, Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, hero of the Xerian War, future husband of Princess Zara. When Zara read the message, she was terrified. You're challenging my uncle publicly. He'll destroy you. He can try, Jake said. But I didn't survive a suicide mission against the Xerians just to give up on the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you? Jake looked into her eyes. Zara, for the first time in my life, I'm with someone who understands what it means to care about others. Someone who sees the good in people instead of just their usefulness. If that's not worth fighting for, I don't know what is. Zara threw her arms around him and held tight. For the first time in her life, someone was willing to fight for her instead of against her. Outside the ship's windows, the stars wheeled silently through space, carrying them toward whatever challenges waited ahead. But Jake wasn't worried about the future anymore. He had found something worth protecting. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of species filled the great chamber on Concordia Prime. The air buzzed with tension and worried voices speaking in many languages. Jake sat in the human section next to Admiral Parker. 3 rows ahead, Princess Zara sat with the Altarian delegation. Even from behind, Jake could see how stiff and nervous she was. Her uncle, Duke Malthorn, sat beside her with a look of cold disapproval. The situation is worse than we thought, Admiral Parker whispered to Jake. The hegemony has attacked 3 more systems in the past week. They're moving faster than anyone expected. The hegemony was a military alliance of species that had refused to join the Galactic Council. They believed that peace made civilizations weak. For years they had stayed in their own territory, but now they were expanding aggressively toward Council space. Council President Vextar, a tall reptilian being, called for order. We are here to address the growing threat from the Hegemony Alliance. Their forces have destroyed our outposts in the Kelos system and are moving toward human and Corvan colonies. A holographic display showed the galactic map. Red markers indicated hegemony forces advancing like a spreading disease across Council territory. Traditional diplomacy has failed, President Vextar continued. Supreme General Korthak of the hegemony has refused all communication attempts. We must consider military action. Jake watched as representative after representative stood to speak. They all said the same thing. The hegemony could not be reasoned with, so they must be fought. After 2 hours of debate, Jake was getting frustrated. Finally, he stood up. Mr. President, may I speak? A murmur went through the chamber. Jake was just a sergeant. He had no official authority to address the council. This is irregular, Duke Malthorn said loudly. The human has no standing here. The human, President Vextar replied, is the one who ended the Zerion War. I think we can listen to what he has to say. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. Thank you, Mr. President. I've been listening to this debate for hours, and I think everyone is missing something important. Which is? Asked the Corvan ambassador. We're assuming the hegemony wants war because they like fighting. But what if they're afraid of something? Several representatives laughed. The hegemony fears nothing, said the Therian delegate. They are conquerors, maybe, Jake said. But I learned something during the war with the Zerions. Every enemy has a reason for fighting. Find the reason, and you might find a solution. And how do you propose we find this reason? Duke Malthorn asked with obvious sarcasm. Jake looked directly at Princess Zara. We send someone who can understand what they're really feeling. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Duke Malthorn stood up angrily. You cannot be serious. My niece is untrained in diplomacy. She's trained in something more important, Jake said. She can sense emotions and motivations that others miss. Give her a chance to try what force and traditional diplomacy have failed to accomplish. This is absurd, the Altarian Duke continued. Zara is unfit for such responsibility. She is barely suited for— Uncle, please. Zara's voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. She stood up slowly. May I speak for myself? Duke Malthorn looked furious, but he could not refuse her in front of the entire council. Zara walked to the center of the chamber. Jake could see her hands shaking, but her voice was steady. Honored representatives, she said, I know that many of you see my abilities as a weakness. In Altarian society, empathy is considered a flaw. But I have learned that understanding others is not weakness, it is strength. She gestured toward the galactic map. You see the hegemony as mindless aggressors, but they are living beings with thoughts and feelings just like us. If I could speak with them, I might learn what drives their actions. And if you are wrong? Asked the Therian delegate. If they simply kill you? Zara looked at Jake, drawing strength from his encouraging smile. Then we will be no worse off than we are now. But if I am right, we might find a way to end this conflict without destroying millions of lives. President Vextar leaned forward. What would you need for such a mission? A small diplomatic ship, a minimal crew, and permission to speak for the Council in peace negotiations. Duke Malthorn nearly exploded. This is madness. You would trust the safety of the galaxy to an untested girl with delusions of importance. I would trust it, Jake said firmly, to someone who has never seen other beings as enemies to be destroyed, but as people to be understood. The debate that followed was heated and long. Many representatives opposed the plan. It was too risky, too unprecedented. How could they trust such an important mission to someone who had never held a diplomatic post? But others were intrigued. The traditional approaches had failed completely. Maybe it was time to try something different. Finally, President Vextar called for a vote. All in favor of authorizing Princess Zara's diplomatic mission? The vote was close, closer than Jake had expected. But when the count was finished, Zara's mission was approved by a margin of 3 votes. 2 days later, Jake and Zara stood on the bridge of the small diplomatic vessel Harmony as it approached Terminus Rex, the capital world of the hegemony. The ship was lightly armed and carried only a dozen crew members. Are you sure about this? Zara asked Jake. She'd been nervous during the entire journey. I'm sure about you, Jake replied. You can do this. The communication system crackled to life. Unknown vessel, you are approaching hegemony space. State your business or be destroyed. Captain Ben Foster, the ship's commander, responded. This is the diplomatic vessel Harmony. We request permission to meet with Supreme General Korthak on behalf of the Galactic Council. There was a long pause. Then follow the escort ships. Any deviation from course will result in your destruction. 6 hegemony fighters surrounded the Harmony and guided it toward Terminus Rex. The planet was a fortress world, covered with military installations and weapons platforms. They landed at a heavily guarded spaceport. Hegemony soldiers in black armor escorted Jake and Zara to a massive building that looked more like a fortress than a government center. Supreme General Korthak was not what Jake had expected. He was tall and powerful-looking, with gray skin and burning red eyes. But when Zara used her abilities to read his emotions, she sensed something unexpected. He's afraid, she whispered to Jake as they waited in the general's office. Afraid of what? I'm not sure yet. But the fear is very strong. When General Korthak entered the room, his presence filled the space. He moved like a predator and his voice was deep and threatening. So, he said, the council sends a child to negotiate with the hegemony. Is this meant to insult us? No, General, Zara said calmly. I am here because I believe there is more to this conflict than either side understands. Korthak laughed harshly. Understanding? The council has made its position clear. Join us or be conquered. There is nothing to understand. That's not what I sense from you, Zara said quietly. The general's eyes narrowed dangerously. What did you say? You're not angry about territory or resources. You're afraid that if your people join the council, they will lose their independence. You're afraid they will become weak and dependent like you believe the council species have become. Korthak was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but still dangerous. You think you understand us because you can read minds. I can sense emotion, Zara said. And yours tell me that you are trying to protect your people, not conquer others. Protection requires strength. The council offers only weakness disguised as cooperation. Jake stepped forward. General, what if I told you that cooperation can make you stronger, not weaker? I would say you are a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool who destroyed a Xerion mothership using tactics they couldn't predict. Sometimes the unexpected approach is the strongest one. Over the next several hours, Jake and Zara worked together to understand what the hegemony really wanted. It was not conquest for its own sake. They were afraid that joining the council would mean giving up their military strength and becoming vulnerable to threats like the Xerions. Your species has been invaded before, Zara said to General Korthak. Long ago you were conquered and enslaved. You swore never to be weak again. Korthak's red eyes burned with old pain. The Xerions held our worlds for 50 years. They used our people as slaves and soldiers. When we finally freed ourselves, we vowed that no one would ever rule over us again. But the council isn't trying to rule over you, Jake said. They're trying to work with you. Words, Korthak spat. The Xerions also spoke of cooperation when they first came to our worlds. Zara looked at Jake with sudden understanding. This was the key. The hegemony's fear was based on their history of being betrayed by those who promised partnership. General, she said, what if there was a way to join the council while keeping your military independence? What if cooperation didn't mean giving up your strength? For the first time, General Korthak looked interested instead of angry. Explain. And slowly, carefully, Zara began to outline. A new kind of alliance, one that respected the hegemony's need for military autonomy while still bringing them into the larger galactic community. Jake watched with growing admiration as Zara worked her magic. She wasn't just negotiating, she was. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the balcony of his new home on New Terra, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. It was hard to believe how much his life had changed since that day on Concordia Prime, when he had chosen the princess everyone else ignored. You're up early, Zara said, joining him on the balcony. She carried 2 cups of coffee. She had developed a taste for the earth drink during their travels. I couldn't sleep, Jake admitted. Today feels important. Today was their official wedding ceremony. The first one on Concordia Prime had been a political necessity. This one would be for them, surrounded by friends and family from across the galaxy. Are you having second thoughts? Zara asked, though she was smiling as she said it. Not even close, Jake replied, putting his arm around her. Are you? Never. Zara leaned against him. Though I still can't believe how much everything has changed. She was right. The peace treaty with the hegemony had transformed galactic politics. General Korthak had become an unlikely ally, and his military forces now protected council worlds alongside their own. The agreement Zara had negotiated had become a model for dealing with other independent species. More importantly, Zara herself had changed. The frightened hidden princess was gone. In her place was a confident diplomat who had become the most sought-after negotiator in the galaxy. 3 more conflicts had been resolved through her empathic abilities, saving countless lives. Your father is proud of you, Jake said. I know. It's strange, isn't it? For years he thought I was the family disappointment. Now he brags about me to anyone who will listen. Emperor Vorthak had indeed changed his opinion of his youngest daughter. When the Galactic Council had offered Zara the position of ambassador for interspecies relations, he had supported her enthusiastically. Even Duke Malthorn had been forced to publicly acknowledge her achievements, though Jake could tell the man still didn't like admitting he had been wrong. Jake? Zara's voice was thoughtful. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had chosen one of my sisters? Jake considered the question seriously. I think the galaxy would be a darker place. Liana would have made me a duke, but she never would have seen the hegemony as anything more than enemies to be defeated. Celeste would have given me access to advanced technology, but she never would have understood that General Korthak's anger came from old pain. And the war would probably still be going on. Millions more would have died. They stood in comfortable silence watching the alien sunrise. New Terra was a beautiful world, with vast oceans and floating cities that reminded Jake of the science fiction stories he had read as a child. The human government had offered them a mansion in the capital, but they had chosen this simple house by the sea. The guests should start arriving soon, Zara said. Jake nodded. It would be quite a gathering. Admiral Parker and Colonel Hayes were coming from Earth. General Korthak was bringing a delegation from the hegemony, the first time their ships had entered council space for peaceful purposes. Even Princess Liana and Princess Celeste would be there, representing the Altarian Empire. Are you nervous about seeing your sisters again? Zara smiled. No, Liana actually apologized to me last month. She said she had been foolish not to see my value. Celeste has been asking me to help her understand the emotional aspects of scientific research. She thinks my empathic abilities could help her design better technologies. And your uncle still doesn't approve of me, but he can't argue with the results. The peace treaty has made our family more powerful and respected than ever. Jake laughed. Politics. Family politics are the worst kind. As the morning progressed, ships began landing at the spaceport near their home. Jake watched through the window as beings from a dozen different worlds emerged from their vessels. A year ago, many of these species had been on the verge of war with each other. Now they were here to celebrate a wedding. Amy Brooks, now a captain, was among the first to arrive. She hugged Jake tightly and smiled at Zara. I still can't believe you two, she said. The war hero and the princess who saved the galaxy with kindness. We saved it together, Zara said firmly. Captain Foster arrived next, along with the crew of the Harmony. They had become celebrities after their successful diplomatic mission, though they remained humble about their role. Jake, Captain Foster said, I have something for you. He handed Jake a small metal object. It was a piece of debris from the Zarion mothership, polished and mounted on a simple stand. I thought you might want a reminder of where this all started. Jake was touched. The piece of alien metal represented the moment his life had changed forever, not just because he had won a victory, but because that victory had led him to Zara. As the afternoon approached, more guests arrived. General Korthak came with a full honor guard, impressive in their black and silver uniforms. Jake was surprised to see that the general was smiling, something that would have been unthinkable during their first meeting. Morrison, Korthak said in his deep voice, I bring greetings from the Hegemony Council. Thank you, General. I'm honored that you came. The honor is mine. Your mate has taught my people much about the strength that comes from understanding rather than conquest. Korthak turned to Zara and bowed formally. Princess, the Hegemony owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You saw through our anger to the fear beneath, and you helped us find a path to honor without war. You found that path yourselves, General. I just helped you see it. As the sun began to set, the wedding ceremony began. It was held on the beach, with the ocean providing a natural backdrop. President Vextar of the Galactic Council had agreed to officiate, making this the first interspecies wedding conducted at the highest levels of galactic government. Jake stood at the altar wearing his dress uniform, watching as Zara walked down the aisle. She wore a simple white dress in the human tradition, but with Altarian jewelry that caught the light like captured stars. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was radiant with happiness. When she reached him, Jake took her hands and looked into her eyes. He could see their entire future there. The challenges they would face together, the differences they would bridge, the love that would sustain them through whatever came next. Princess Zara of Altair, President Vextar said in his formal voice, "Do you take this human as your partner in life and service to the galaxy?" "I do," Zara said, her voice clear and strong. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison of Earth, "Do you take this princess as your partner in life and service to the galaxy?" "I do," Jake replied. "Then by the authority of the Galactic Council and the governments of your respective worlds, I pronounce you married. May your union bring peace and understanding to all species." The crowd erupted in cheers. Beings from dozens of worlds applauded and called out congratulations in their native languages. Jake kissed Zara as fireworks exploded overhead, a human tradition that had been adopted by many other species. Later at the reception, Jake found himself talking with Emperor Vorthak. The Altarian ruler looked more relaxed than Jake had ever seen him. "I owe you an apology, young Morrison," the Emperor said. "When you chose Zara, I thought you were making a mistake. I believed you had been deceived about her worth, and now I realize that you saw something the rest of us were blind to. My youngest daughter has become the most valuable member of our family, perhaps the most important diplomat in galactic history." Jake smiled. "I just saw someone who needed someone to believe in her. It was more than that. You saw potential where others saw only weakness. That is a rare gift." As the evening continued, Jake and Zara moved among their guests, receiving congratulations and well wishes. Jake was struck by how many different species were represented. Humans, Altarians, Hegemony members, Corvans, Therians, and others, all celebrating together in peace. "You know what this means, don't you?" Zara said as they danced under the stars. "What?" "We're going to have very interesting children. Half human, half Altarian children with empathic abilities." Jake grinned. "The galaxy won't know what hit it. They'll be natural diplomats, born to understand different species and help them work together, just like their mother." As the night wound down and their guests began to depart, Jake and Zara stood together on the beach. The ocean waves lapped gently at the shore, and both moons of New Terra cast silver light across the water. "Do you ever think about that night on Concordia Prime?" Zara asked. "When you had to choose between my sisters and me?" "Sometimes. Why?" "I keep wondering what made you see something in me that no one else could see." Jake thought about his answer carefully. "I think it was because you were the only one who saw something in me that others missed too." "What do you mean?" "Your sisters saw a useful soldier, a tool that could bring them power or status. But you saw a person who cared about others, someone who fought not because he loved war but because he loved peace enough to defend it." Zara smiled. "So we saved each other. We did. And along the way we might have saved the galaxy too." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the alien stars reflect on the water. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were other conflicts to resolve, other species to understand, other bridges to build between the peoples of the galaxy. But tonight, Jake Morrison and Princess Zara had everything they needed. They had each